Holy shit. Goo of Durf. Let's watch. Okay. Secretary Buttigieg. Okay, let's watch Secretary Buttigieg. This is the guy they want to run for president. By the way, if Pete Buttigieg ever wins the Democratic nomination, I'm voting Republican or Green or something. There is absolutely no world in which I vote for him. I consider the nomination of Pete Buttigieg to be a sign of the species committing suicide. I just can't. I'm just never voting for him. CP USA, you got my vote.
Did we just live to see the high watermark of liberty and freedom and rights in this country?
Yes, dipshit, because you centrist scum won't do anything. I think that actually, and I'll be honest, I think that's the first sentence of Pete Buttigieg, after I just shit on him. That's the first sentence of Pete Buttigieg that's actually coherent and correct. If you don't do something quickly, my dude, it's going to be over.
I think that's the question in front of us. So as somebody who believes in a woman's right to choose, the decision we made as a society, not just the decision that was made in the court, but I would argue a decision that we have made, at least a majority of us are on board with as a society, that even if we cannot come into alignment on the incredibly complex, difficult, philosophical, moral, and sometimes spiritual questions over...
What? I hate centrist scum. Oh, the conservatives are right. They have such good arguments. Your arguments is murdering of a baby. You're right. Your arguments are so complex and subtle and the mysteries of faith. You're a baby killer. Oh, you're so smart. Actual insanity.
Things like where to draw a line when deciding about terminating a pregnancy. That we could at least agree on who gets to draw that line.
The woman.
I trust women to draw that line. For the last 50 years, America has trusted women to draw that line, has recognized that as a right. And now it would appear that the court is poised to take that understanding away. Of course, not only is that a source of fear for so many Americans, for so many, but it raises the question about what other rights are going to be put on the table, especially because unlike some rights that we have had for decades.
Okay, and this is how they surrender the ball. He's moving on. He said, oh, they're taking away your rights. Okay, moving on to other rights. Excuse me, sir? I know you don't have a uterus, but the first thing you should say is, not only is that not an acceptable answer, it undermines the legitimacy of the American Constitution, and women would be well within their rights to take extraordinary or extra legal means to defend their rights, because it derives from a basic sense of personal bodily autonomy. And if somebody's trying to enslave you, you have the right to self-defense. If someone's trying to enslave you as an incubator against your will, you can fight back using any and all force. There's nothing to wait for. We don't have to look at another right. That's the right. Can you imagine if they could take you and put you in bed for 3 months so that you could produce blood for somebody else to survive? Or they could take you to a hospital bed and remove a kidney without your consent? What are you talking about, man? We're already at the point. We don't need to look at other rights. We have the right. The right that was taken away, a woman's right to control her own body, is as far as we need to go to recognize we are in DEFCON 1.
Some of the rights that have come to the queer community are quite new. When I became mayor of South Bend, the idea that I could be married, certainly the idea that I could be a confirmed cabinet member from Indiana, talking about my 2 kids that my husband and I are raising, would have been so much...
You were not confirmed by the people of Indiana. You were confirmed. You were confirmed by the cosmopolitan 50 Democrats.
Somewhere between unlikely and preposterous. And that possibility was secured by an action of the court. And so we know how fragile that is. Sometimes they get kicked around on...
Man, it takes a certain type of sociopath that when you're talking about the revocation of someone else's rights to immediately reframe it into your own. Is he the ultimate narcissist, or am I fucking losing my mind? Like, to me, the revocation of the Roe v. Wade is already such an extreme invasion on someone else's rights. I don't need to conceptualize it in the terms of myself. I mean, I gave you an example after I did an impassioned plea about how women's bodily autonomy is under assault, and that in and of itself draws a question under the legitimacy of our Constitution. But to then turn it to yourself, I mean, like, I just find that off-putting. I really don't like Pete. I really don't like him. I really don't like this guy. Did you watch Kamala's response? Oh, God. She's the worst politician I've ever seen. So did she laugh in the middle of it? Did she laugh in the middle of it?
On political TV shows and sometimes in academic environments as if it's theory, and it's not, is it? It's how our lives are going to go. Then you have the agenda that has led to things like the Don't Say Gay bill. In my view, is a little narrower, though not less destructive, than the 40-year-long conservative political project that is culminating in what we're seeing perhaps about to happen to Roe.
Oh my God. Like, I feel like you have to have a certain type of like teacher's pet brain to like this kid. I think you need to have some sort of like weird like teacher's pet brain. Funkadelic says there are so many people in Congress who hide and mask their true intentions by hiding behind the panel of rotating villains. People don't seem to realize this, but rotating villains not only serve to shut down progressive measures, but they also allow others to hide behind their dissenting votes. There are consistently around 8 to 10 right-wing Democrats who pop out of hiding, voting against the party platform, like Kelly, Tester, Hassan, Coons, Mastro, Cortez, Feinstein, etc. You're totally right. And every single one of those people are the problem. And I think we should take them out. The institutionalist dilemma on trusting the process after it's openly failed. Sometimes when I am explaining the somewhat eclectic variety of topics I write about in my newsletter compared to the work I did at other publications for many years, I joke that I just ran out of ways to say the Senate shouldn't exist. But it's also a fact. I was blogging this in 2010. Nothing has fundamentally changed about how the Senate works since George Packer wrote the damning portrait of a dysfunctional institution, and I reference in that old Salon piece. More than a decade later, Senate institutionalists still make up a majority of the Democratic caucus, and they still believe the way to make the institution work is to not change its rules, but to somehow change the nature of the opposition. In some sense, I gave up on the Senate. I spend less time carefully making the arguments for reforming it. I made them already alongside lots of other smarter people with even better arguments, and the people who in charge of the left of center party essentially turned us all out because they are institutionalists, and the institution can only be failed. It cannot be, by its very design, a failure. When we all learned that the far-right majority on the Supreme Court plans to gut the right to privacy that undergirds legal abortion access in the United States, a few patterns emerged in people's responses. Most liberals were furious. Others in the media were outraged on behalf of the Supreme Court because they feared the leaking of the draft opinion could undermine the public's faith in the legitimacy of the institution. Many of these takes were bad faith from conservatives sort of desperately reaching for a talking point, but some of them were really quite sincere. This is the mindset of the institutionalists. It is important that people retain faith in our institutions, which does not mean our institutions should work to earn people's faith, but instead that people shouldn't hear about it when they don't. And and by the way, this is conservatism. This is conservatism. This is theoretical, ideological conservatism. The institution is important. The institution has a logic that you don't need to understand explicitly. You need to just have faith in tradition, because tradition got us here. So there must be some knowledge that we can't quite suss out. It's the mystery of faith, but you turn it into politics. That's conservatism. And if you're a Catholic, you understand exactly what I'm saying. If you've never heard these concepts before, then you probably don't understand why conservatives are the way they are. This attitude is especially common in lawyers who, as a profession, turn nothing is true, everything is permitted into a professional ethic. And of course, many elected officials, and especially Democrats, are lawyers. To their credit, by the way, I reject this profession. As someone who's trained in its ways, it's a mercenary, sophist, infected filth. It's bilge. And our system of lawyering is corrupt in its very essence. They don't seek truth, they seek victory. Fucking gross. To their credit, most elected Democrats do not fret over the circumstances of the leak. By and large, they did their best to channel the fear and anger their constituents were feeling into useful political energy. Unfortunately, that sometimes looks like this from Rep. Sean Patrick Maloney, a New York Democrat and chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Democrats, we are angry and hurt, I know, but it's not about the filibuster, size of the court, or what the Senate hasn't passed. It's about Republicans, not us. We can save our freedoms, but it's November, stupid. This is probably the most ham-fisted and hard to parse example of the vote harder response to the news that the conservative Supreme Court majority plans to eliminate abortion rights this summer, before moving on to other rights in the months and years to come. We can save the freedoms as long as you, stupid, vote in November. To paraphrase our former president, I want to be clear. Vote harder is not a bad message because it's untrue. If more people voted for Democrats, they would win more elections. And my preference is that Democrats win more elections than Republicans. Well, here's the problem with that. Democrat doesn't mean anything. I can tell you that because they've already won. When I vote for a Democrat, it doesn't matter. I'm not getting anything. When I vote for a Democrat, I don't know if they're pro-choice. If I vote for a Democrat, I don't know if they want to raise the minimum wage, or they care about gay rights, or they care about the environment and climate change. Nothing is promised. I get a Democrat. Vote for a Democrat to get a Democrat. What's that mean? It means they're a Democrat. It's circular. It means nothing. Look at California. Democrats control everything. It's shit. Maybe you'll get lucky. Vote harder is a bad message because it's annoying, and annoying people is a bad way to make them want to vote for you. At this point, it's also clear that it's bad messaging because it's insufficient. A larger Democratic majority next year might pass a law protecting abortion rights. Actually, they won't, because they will be filibustered. And it's only if we have a majority of anti-filibusters in the Senate. You got to show me first of all, who supports the filibuster and who doesn't? We don't know. We don't know who supports the filibuster and who doesn't. There's about 10 Democratic senators who don't even comment on it. I don't even know how many senators we need to replace. And Joe Biden doesn't even support it openly. So what is the fucking idea here? Barring a massive sea change in how Democrats govern, that hypothetical congressional majority has no hope whatsoever of protecting that law from existing Supreme Court majority. One of the most consequential contradictions of the Democratic Party is the vast majority of its staffers, consultants, elected, and media avatars, along with a substantial portion of its electoral base, are institutionalists. They believe broadly in the system. The system worked for them, and if the system's outputs are bad, it is because we need more of the right sort of people to join or be elected to enter the system. When the party does manage to win majorities, it depends on support from a substantial number of anti-system people. Barack Obama defeated the Clintons with this sacred knowledge before he started reading David Brooks. Institutionalists, in my experience, have trouble reaching an anti-system person because they think being against the system is an inherently adolescent and silly mindset. Believing in things like the integrity of the Supreme Court has proven to be, I think, much sillier and much more childish. That's also why people like Destiny attack people for wanting the Democrats to do things, or attack people for saying Roe v. Wade was a good decision. Because if you believe that, then the system has failed, and we have to change the system. It's important that you try to belittle and say that people are ignorant or adolescent than actually deal with the arguments. Because dealing with the arguments is hard. Insulting someone is easy. In the beginning of Joe Biden's presidency, a lot of very intelligent people tried to come up with ideas for how to change the Supreme Court, which is poised to spend years eroding the regulatory state and chipping away at civil rights. Expand it, perhaps, or marginalize it. President Joe Biden, a committed institutionalist, formed a commission of legal scholars from across the ideological spectrum, of course, to investigate what ought to be done about it. They failed to come up with any answers. Lawmakers should be cautious about any reform that seems aimed at the substance of court decisions or grounded in interpretations of the Constitution, over which there is great disagreement in our political life. You might be mad at the court because of decisions it produces, but it's essential that everyone still trusts the processes that led to them. In other words, no matter what the court says, you have to say it's a good decision. That is insane. This is a white flag. I think some people in the White House have some sick hope that the end of Roe will galvanize the midterm electorate. Something like that may indeed happen. It won't, but maybe it will. Who knows? I doubt. But if they wish to understand why the president has been bleeding youth support for the last year, they should try and imagine these young people, and young at this point is expanded like 45, not as the annoying and hyper-engaged freaks they see on Twitter every day, but as the ones they don't see anywhere because, having been urged to pay furious attention by people in the party, they discovered that those people had absolutely no realistic plans to overcome entrenched systemic obstacles to progress. Maybe some of those voters went back to brunch. I suspect many of them went back to work brunch. The legitimacy crisis is that our institutions are illegitimate. For my entire adult life, beginning with Bush v. Gore, our governing institutions have been avowedly anti-democratic, and the left of center party has no answer for that plain fact. No strategy, no plan, except to beg the electorate to give them governing majorities, which they then fail to use to reform the anti-democratic governing institutions. They often have perfectly plausible excuses for why they couldn't do better, but that commitment to our existing institutions means they can't credibly claim to have an answer to this moment. Give us another majority and hope Clarence Thomas dies is a best case scenario, but not exactly a sales pitch. This is dead on balls accurate. Great Substack article, and you should all go check it out. You have an obligation to like, comment, and subscribe.